time for our thought leader keynote. And it is an absolute honor for me to introduce this gentleman. The question we're going to address today is, will customer service be Uberized? And our speaker is considered a visionary in the world of digital media and interactive content. He was named as one of the digital dozen most influential players in new media by Variety magazine. He has unique views on managing innovation, sought out by some of the biggest companies and the biggest personalities in the world, including Oprah. So that'll give you an idea of just how influential he is. And he's also very well-rounded. He is an artist and a musician. He likes video games. He's a game designer. And also, on top of all of that, he's even been a TV director in the past. Please welcome author and futurist Robert Tercek.
Thank you very much. Well, for 25 years, I've been launching digital services all over the world, beginning right here in Asia in 1991 with the launch of Star TV, and then later in Europe, Latin America, and North America. And I've noticed a trend, a change that's happening that's so profound and so significant that it's likely to transform every business in the world, including the businesses that you represent. And today, that's what I want to talk to you about. The trend is called dematerialization. Dematerialization into software. We're replacing physical things with software. The term I use for this is vaporized. Literally, things are disappearing in a puff of smoke, like a magic trick. I like this concept so much, I wrote a book about it called Vaporized. We're literally turning physical things into invisible software that can be downloaded to a phone. I know that sounds crazy, but in fact, we all experience this every single day. Consider, for instance, books. Books have been vaporized. Amazon now sells more e-books than hardbound and paper-bound books combined. And of course, famously, the music business has been vaporized. Streaming music services now generate more revenue than any other form of music sales for the record labels. The game industry, which I love, has been totally transformed. 15 years ago, mobile games were a joke. Now mobile games are transforming the economics of the game industry. And with that, they're also transforming the way games are designed and launched and promoted and sold. And television. Yes, even television is being transformed. It's being vaporized. More than half of the video that is watched is streamed on demand today from a video service delivered over the internet. And these new streaming video services, they don't own satellites in the sky. They don't own broadcast networks and television stations with antennas. They don't own cable systems in the ground. They don't have physical infrastructure. They've virtualized all of that infrastructure. They're pure software products. So we're turning television into a software product. It's not just media. It's not just music and television that are being transformed this way. We're actually replacing hardware with software as well. And again, that sounds like a strange idea, but it's quite common. It's something that we all do every single day. Your standard smartphone today now offers, as a standard feature built into it, software that replaces TV sets, game consoles, voice recorders, GPS systems, navigation systems, and a host of other things. About 25 different physical products have been vaporized. And by the way, the electronics companies that make the cameras and the TV sets, they're experiencing double-digit decreases in sales because of this. So consumer behavior has changed tremendously as we've begun to replace physical things with software. And here's what's really very important. This part is the most important thing I have to share with you. As goods become more information-rich, they lose the characteristics of a physical product, and they take on the attributes of a digital service. And that's really important if you're in the customer experience business, if you're in the customer service business. It means that customer service is going to very quickly become the most important connection point to the consumer because it's no longer a physical product. This changes everything we know about marketing. Uber is a terrific example of this. Uber isn't really vaporizing the car per se, but what they are changing is they're replacing the need to purchase a car. They're replacing ownership. You now can have access to a car whenever you need it without purchasing the car. That's a giant change. And the question we all need to consider today then is, how might our products be turned into services? How can we turn a physical product into a digital service? And as Bruce said, think about the outcomes. If you begin with that in mind, you can work your way back to a digital service. What outcome for your customer are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to accomplish? How does your customer want to accomplish something? How can you help them do that? And then you start to get a concept for a digital service that can replace a physical product. So today's question is, will customer service be Uberized? I know the answer. Here's the answer. Yes. That's it. You can all go home now. We're done here. Oh, you want more? Okay, you want more? I'll give you more. To give you more, we have to get a little further into it. We have to figure out what our definition of Uber actually is. So what is Uber? How do we define Uber? Some people will say, well, Uber's a taxi service. And other people say, well, it's more important than that. It's a marketplace for services. And some people say, yeah, but what's important about Uber is it's the most valuable startup company in history. And other people say, no, that's not important. What's important about Uber is that it's a disruptor on a grand scale. Well, of course, you know the answer is that all of these things are true. And much more, much more. I'm going to show you that. Let's start one by one. I'll start with the first point. Uber is a taxi service. This is a great understatement. Anyone who thinks that is really missing the point of Uber. Uber is much better than a taxi service. It's much greater. Now, you have great taxis here in Singapore. Beautiful cabs, they arrive on time, the drivers are very polite. How many people have driven a cab in New York City? It is without a doubt the worst customer experience ever for anything on the planet. Don't you agree? It's a terrible experience. I mean, think about it. In New York, the taxi cabs are not available when you need them. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you want to get a ride to the airport. That's exactly when all the cab drivers finish their shift and they go home. You cannot get a cab in New York at 4 o'clock. It's terrible. They're very expensive for what you get. And because the cabs are used 24 hours a day, they're never cleaned, they're not washed, they're not really repaired very well. These cabs are in bad shape, and when you sit inside them, they're dirty, they're uncomfortable. Usually there's not enough leg room. The window is covered with stickers and warnings from the city. You can't see anything. And then when you try to talk to the driver, you find out that they're rude. Now that's no surprise, because everybody in New York is rude. But what's even worse is the cab drivers in New York are clueless because they're not from New York. They don't know where they're going. And many times I've had to tell the cab driver where to go. I'd had to give him directions while I'm in the car. I don't live in New York. I live in Los Angeles, and I'm telling the cab driver where to find the directions, where to go, where to turn. And if you think that's not bad enough, consider this. What company in the world would subject their customers to this experience? Standing on the street in the pouring rain. This is the worst customer experience you can possibly imagine. No sane company would force their customer to stand in the rain or in the freezing cold snow in order to access their service. This idea of hailing a cab is terrible. And of course, the mobile phone changes everything. That's giving us the ability to summon services on demand whenever we need them. It also changes us. I call this the activated audience. It's actually changing the customer. The mobile phone transforms us and turns us into a different kind of person. I'll give you an example. For a generation that grew up with tablets and smartphones at their disposal, for this generation, the letters www, they don't stand for the World Wide Web. www stands for whatever, wherever, and whenever. And that's the attitude that this customer has. They expect to get whatever they want, wherever they want it, on their terms. They actually want instant gratification in the form of a single button that they can touch. That's the customer expectation that the smartphone has created. And as the actress Meryl Streep tells us, instant gratification isn't soon enough. What we really want are services that anticipate our needs. They know us so well that they can recommend and predict and prescribe what we're going to want to do next. And this is where Uber fits in, and this is why Uber is such an important company. You see, of course, with Uber, you can summon a cab anytime you need one. A black car, a driver will come and appear. All you have to do is pull out the app and just tap one time to set your location and summon a car. Within seconds, you get a notification that tells you that a car is on its way. And then within a few minutes, magically, a car arrives. You jump into the car. You don't have to tell the driver where to go. He already knows because he's got the directions. He already has a map telling him where to go, so you don't have to talk to the driver if you don't want to. And the Uber app is magically concise. It doesn't send you too many notifications. It just sends you a couple. It confirms that you ordered the car and tells you when the car will arrive. And then when you finish the trip, it sends out a receipt, and it tells you how much money you spent and asks you to rate the driver. This is a very efficient way to navigate through a city. And one of the nice things, if you travel internationally, is that the Uber app is the same in more than 400 cities around the world. So if you're an Uber customer, you can find an Uber ready for you just about everywhere, including here in Singapore. And of course, you can integrate your credit card of your choice, but if you don't use a credit card, then you can use Google Pay. In China, you can use Alipay. And in India, there are other payment methods that are used. And so Uber integrates the payment system of your choice into their app. And that's very convenient for customers. It gives them the option to pay how they wish to pay, the way they want to pay. Uber does more than this. This is just the beginning. They're quite innovative. In fact, here's a subtle thing that they offer, this idea that you can split the fare. Now, you might wonder, why would I ever want that? If you travel in a taxi by yourself, you might not think you have a need for that. But I live in Beverly Hills, and the teenage boys there, when they go out on the weekend, they don't have a lot of money to pay for a taxi. So then 4 of them will jump into an Uber car together, and they split the fare, and that way it fits into their spending allowance. So this enables new customers who would never take a taxi to access a driver, access the service. It makes the service affordable for other customers. Some people have expressed concern about safety. They worry about the passengers in the car. Uber has a solution for that as well. You can actually send your itinerary to your friends. And so for women or for children, if you put them in an Uber car, they can text their itinerary to you. You can share their itinerary. You can see where they are. You can see when they're going to arrive. And so as you can see with the app, then Uber has really addressed some of the major customer experience problems with taxis. There's no cash. No money changes hands. There's no language problem. You don't even need to speak to the driver if you don't want to, if you don't speak their language. You don't have to give them directions because the map is built into the driver's app, so they know exactly where to take you. And therefore, there's no confusion and there's no possibility that you're going to be cheated by that driver. So that's a great experience, but that's just the beginning. Uber's better than this. Here's one of my favorite new features they've added on top of Uber, the integration with Spotify. Now, yesterday I took a taxi here to a dinner appointment in Singapore, and the cab was great. The driver was very polite. It was a very affordable ride. It was very satisfying. But one thing about that ride wasn't satisfying. When I got in, I had to listen to his pop music. And I like Singapore very much, but I'm not a big fan of Singapore pop music. In Uber, I can pull out my Uber app, and I can connect to the stereo in the car with one button, and I can play my streaming music from Spotify, the music playlist of my choice. So this gives me even more control over the customer experience. This is a great way to satisfy that demanding customer that wants instant gratification. Another example, some people complain about how hard it is to find an Uber. I live in LA, and when I land at the airport, if I order an Uber, sometimes there are literally dozens of cars, black cars from Uber, and you don't know which one is yours. So that's a little bit confusing. Uber solved that problem. They introduced an LED strip that can be attached in the driver's window, and I get to choose the color. So if I want a green car, if I'm looking for green, I touch that color, and that way I can spot my car out of a sea of black cars. I know which one is for me. So as you can see, Uber's very clever with the way they're introducing new features that change the customer experience of riding in a black car. But that's not all. They're also a data-driven company. And as we know from many reports, big data is a giant defining trend. Every company now needs to understand data and use it to improve their services. Some people will tell you that data is the new oil. But unlike oil or gold or any other natural resource, data gushes forth in an unquenchable geyser. There's enormous amounts of data, and it takes tremendous skill to manage that flow, to manage it and pull out intelligent insights from it. Well, Uber is brilliant at using data to make continuous improvements to their service. They are data freaks. They're fanatics about data. They're studying data constantly. Most importantly, they're trying to make sure they know where the customers are and where the customers are going to be so that they can make sure there are enough taxis available, enough cars available for them. In a way, what Uber is doing is they're using load balancing techniques that we use on the internet, and they're applying that to the real world. So instead of load balancing a digital network, they're load balancing a transportation network in the real world. It's incredibly audacious, but it's working. To do this, Uber makes massive investments in data technology. Now, we all know that Google has cars that drive around and map the world, map all the streets in the world for Google Maps. But did you know that Uber has something similar? They have their own fleet of vehicles so that they constantly are improving the maps and the map service. The reason they gather so much data is that they want to make intelligent recommendations. They want to be able to predict what their customers want and recommend exactly what they will need next. And we know from e-commerce that intelligent recommendations can drive more than half of the customer engagement. But this is a tricky thing to try to do in the real world. So here's how Uber's doing this. We all know about the social graph, right? That's Facebook's graph. That's Facebook's proprietary data asset. That's the information about you and the friends that you're connected to and all the information that you share. We also know about the interest graph. The interest graph is what Twitter has. Twitter knows what topics you're interested in, the trending topics that you follow. Well, Uber is figuring out a new kind of graph, the location graph and the proximity graph. The location graph is your profile and all the locations that you like to visit. So they start to know your habits. They know where you're typically going to be. The proximity graph is all the things that you might be interested in that are in the adjacent area around the destinations or locations that you typically like to go to. And what this enables Uber to do is something quite brilliant. You see, they can move from data analysis, which is backwards looking, to predictions where they know where you're going to go next, and then they can get into prescriptions, recommendations of what you might wish to do next, intelligent recommendations. So here's an example. If an Uber driver takes you to a restaurant, well, 90 minutes or 2 hours later, you're likely to get a message from Uber that looks like this. Almost finished with your meal, touch here and you can order a taxi, order an Uber car for your ride home. So it's quite brilliant. They know what you're about to do next. They know where you are because they took you there, and so they can kind of predict, and not just predict, prescribe what you're going to do next. Uber also uses data for quality control. This is super important for your business in the call centers. Everybody's familiar with the 5-star rating, but the way Uber uses this is quite different. They use it in a very interesting way because everyone's rating each other in the Uber service. So while you're rating the driver, what you might not know is that the driver also rates you as a passenger. And so this is the driver rating, and you can see the drivers also get reviews. But then if you look in your profile, you can find that the drivers have also rated you as a passenger. So every time you finish a ride, you're asked to rate the driver, but you might not know that the drivers are also being asked to rate you as a passenger. And if you're loud or rude or drunk, the driver might give you a low rating, and the next time you're looking for an Uber car, it might not be so easy to find one who wants to pick you up. So these are some of the ways that Uber has used data technology and software to not just improve the taxi experience, but to create a radically, vastly superior, incredibly awesome customer experience out of getting a black car. The question, the takeaway point here, I think, for you is to say, what proprietary data asset does your company have? What data asset do you control that can help you radically improve the customer experience? And are you making full use of that? Now, the second point we talked about was the idea that Uber is a marketplace. But again, this is an understatement. Uber is not just a marketplace, they're a platform. And they're also a full ecosystem. Now, we tend to think that the smartphone introduced this idea of on-demand marketplaces. But actually, this is a concept that's built into the telephone network. If you think about a telephone network, the valuable thing in a telephone network isn't the telephone at the end, and it's not even the wires or the wireless spectrum that connects people together. What's most valuable in a network is the switchboard, the exchange. That's the value control point in a telecom network. And every internet service is built on top of a telecom system, and that's why it's not surprising that every successful company on the internet is a kind of switchboard, an exchange. Whether it's Google or Yandex, Alibaba or Amazon, all of these companies are switchboards that connect customers, connect people to the things that they're seeking. So for instance, a social network is a switchboard that connects people to other people. So are messaging apps. A search engine is a kind of switchboard that connects people to the information that they're seeking. And an ad network is a switchboard that connects customers or audiences connects their attention to people who want to get their products and services in front of them. So almost every business that is successful on the internet is a switchboard of some sort or another. But not every company can monetize. To monetize, to turn these audiences into customers, to buy things, you need to have a transaction platform. You need to have a way to purchase things. And so by adding a billing system to the switchboard, we turn the switchboard into a marketplace. You might say the internet is different from broadcast media or electronic media because it has the marketplace built into it. The medium is the market. This is a radically different notion. A one-way network like broadcasting sends information out, but never gathers any kind of information back from its audience or from the viewers. But on a two-way network, there's an exchange happening and value is created, and someone can capture that value. If you have a billing system, you can transact against it. Let's take a look at how Uber does this. In the old days, if you wanted to scale up a taxi business, you owned a fleet of taxis. You would buy several taxis. And so we integrated the car and the dispatch, and that was the control point, and that was how taxi cab businesses became very, very valuable. Uber changes this completely. Uber commoditizes the car and the driver. They unbundle them from the dispatch, and they integrate the dispatch, payment, and the customer experience. That's how they're able to give you such a great customer experience. But that's also how they're able to control that customer and guide them where they want them to go, and it also gives them the ability to switch out these cars anytime they want to. They don't have to invest in physical cars or in drivers. In fact, they don't even have to offer cars. They can offer many other things. Uber found out that people want to have bigger vehicles sometimes, so they created Uber XL and Uber SUV to serve those customers. But in other countries like Thailand, people want a very small vehicle, so they created Uber Moto to get people quickly through crowded traffic in the streets. And in other countries, well, water is a big factor in cities like Istanbul and Miami Beach, and so they created Uber Boat to give you on-demand access to a water taxi that will drive you from one point to another. And in very crowded cities like New York and Shanghai, Uber Chopper will take you through the air. You can order a helicopter on demand. So you see what they're doing. By creating a marketplace, it doesn't have to be limited to cars. It can be any kind of service that they can add on. In fact, you don't even need to be a passenger. Suppose you don't want to go out, but you do want some food. Well, then Uber will bring the food to you. That's what Uber Eats offers. It's a food delivery service built on top of their network. And in addition to that, they now offer bike messenger service called Uber Rush. And this allows local merchants to compete with big online companies like Amazon that are offering one-day delivery or one-hour delivery. Uber Rush guarantees delivery in 2 hours from a local store to you. So as you can see, what Uber's doing is they're turning themselves into a transactional marketplace that rides on the digital network. The next step in their evolution is to become a platform. And the way you do that is you provide software tools to developers so that they can integrate your offering into their offering. So the way Uber does this with the Uber API, the Application Programming Interface. That's a piece of software that's available for people who want to integrate Uber into their app. This button that says Ride There with Uber. The first place this was used was with Google Maps, famously. So with Google Maps, you know, when you use Google Maps, it will give you directions for a car, for public transportation, for a bicycle, or if you want to walk. Well, now there's a fifth option. The fifth option is use an Uber. If you touch that button, it launches the Uber app, and it'll summon a car to take you to the destination you entered into Google Maps. It's a brilliant integration, but that's just the beginning. Today, there are hundreds of other apps. This is TripAdvisor that have integrated this Ride with Uber button. So when you search for a location in TripAdvisor when you're traveling, it will tell you if you can also get an Uber to take you to that place. The next phase in the evolution of apps is conversational commerce. And this actually began in China with WeChat, because the WeChat messaging app has commerce built into it. And so people are able to do transactions inside of a messaging app. Well, Uber is not one to miss this opportunity, and so they're building themselves into messaging apps. Here's an example. Just a few weeks ago, Facebook announced that their messaging app, Facebook Messenger, would have an artificial intelligence called M that would listen to your conversations and make intelligent recommendations. The very first implementation was with Uber. So you can see people are chatting here, and they're talking about making plans for a meeting. We're going to get together later at Market Street, and instantly, a recommendation for Uber pops up. If you touch it, it launches the Uber app, and again, you get to order the Uber right from inside a messaging app. Another example of conversational commerce is with Amazon and their new device, Amazon Echo. If you haven't heard about this, this is artificial intelligence in a speaker inside of your home. It's a very popular new thing. It's brand new. It just came out last summer. It's already very popular. You can talk to Alexa, and you can ask Alexa questions, and it will answer. Well, now you can also talk to Alexa and ask for an Uber cab, and it will order a cab for you. The artificial intelligence will order a cab for you. That is conversational commerce. The next step in Uber's evolution is to move from the switchboard to the marketplace to the platform to a full ecosystem where other people are building businesses on top of Uber's network. And indeed, they're leading here as well. One of the best examples is Uber Offers. Uber Offers is an opportunity for their partners to talk to people who are passengers while they're in an Uber car. So here's an example. While you order your Uber, this is the Uber app. You're in the car, and it happens to be Mother's Day. And Uber says, well, we love Mom too. Why don't you send her some flowers? With one touch of that icon, you can order an Uber full of flowers to go to your mother's house. And the driver will show up at your mother's home and deliver flowers to you. It's a great idea. They know people are busy. People tend to forget that it's Mother's Day. But this is a great way for them to give you an opportunity. It's a great customer experience. It's also a great upsell for them. Now, there are many partners who are doing this. Smirnoff will give you a free ride with Uber. It's a great message, right? Instead of driving after you've been drinking, why not have a free ride home on Smirnoff? Enjoy it. Have an extra drink, and we'll give you a free ride home. Certain payment systems are using Uber, and they're giving a free ride in order to activate those customers. Uber's integrated with many hotels like Hilton and KLM, the airline, many airlines, United Airlines and other airlines. Because when you're using those apps, you're traveling, and they know you need to get from point A to point B. You need to get from the hotel to the airport or from the airport to the hotel, so why not offer a free ride? For Uber, this is cheap customer acquisition. For their partners, this is a brilliant customer experience that increases their enjoyment of the travel that they've already done, whether it's a hotel or an airline. With Disney, Uber did a promotion for Zootopia, their latest movie, where they created Zuber. These are zoo-themed cars that would come pick you up. So you can imagine this really worked well for children as Disney fans. To make this possible, Uber has a global network of developers, everywhere from Africa to Europe to Asia and all the Americas, and they run developer programs. So if you're going to try to turn your business into an ecosystem, you need to actively cultivate a developer network, and Uber's done this very, very well. The next initiative they announced recently is called Uber Trip Experiences, and these are short experiences that happen inside of the car. So the area they're focused on is how can we increase the customer enjoyment while they're in our car? We know where they are, and we know how long that ride will be. And so they've reached out to media partners who want to offer a 5 or 7 minute media experience, a news experience, a sports experience. Or here in this example, you can, if Uber knows you're going home, well then you can use the Uber app to turn on your air conditioning or turn on your heating and get your house ready for your arrival. Another example is if Uber knows that you're traveling to a restaurant. You might want to see the menu of that restaurant before you arrive. And so here's an example of that. As you can see on the left, people are riding in the Uber, and then it knows that you're going to the Zuni Cafe in San Francisco. So if you touch that icon, it'll pull up the menu for the Zuni Cafe, so you can sort of see what you're about to get into. So these are different ways of using software to delight audiences, to delight their customers, to show the customers that Uber's paying attention to them, not in a creepy way, but in a delightful way, where they anticipate what you're going to do, and they know what you're about to do next. They recommend something useful to you. The question to take away here is, what part of my business can become an open platform for collaboration and for communication with my customers? Once you have a customer using your app, it's not enough for them to make an order. After they make the order, after they place the order, that's an opportunity for further dialogue. You can learn more about them and serve them better. Now let's get to this notion of Uber as a startup company. Again, it's a massive understatement. Uber's not just any startup. Uber's the most valuable startup company ever in history. And they raised eyebrows last year in 2015 when they had a valuation of $50 billion, but they actually blew through that this year. The company's raised $9 billion in equity financing and $1 billion in debt, including the largest financing round ever for a private startup company. And as you can see, they exceeded that other large round by Airbnb by a factor of 3. Today, Uber is valued at $62 billion. Private startup company. They're more valuable than Ford Motors and General Motors. Think about that for a second. This is a company that did not exist 7 years ago. out of nowhere. This is a company that doesn't make cars, they don't own cars, they don't hire drivers, but they're valued at $62 billion. Well, Uber's rapid growth has not gone unnoticed. It's like throwing a stone into a very large pond. It creates a ripple effect that goes out and touches every company in that space. And the pond that they're in is the transportation market, the automotive market, and they're forcing other companies to change and adapt. Of course, there are competitors, Uber clones. In every country in the world, there's a local competitor to Uber. In China, Didi Kuaidi has been a very successful company and a fierce competitor that is really stopping Uber from getting into China. In India, Ola is doing something similar. In Europe, it's BlaBlaCar, and in the US and other countries, Lyft is their big competitor. Now, competition is good. That means it's a good space to get into. But this isn't the only place for innovation. These companies are fighting over a piece of the shared mobility market that should account for 25% of all miles driven. That's about 14 trillion miles that'll be driven in 2030. There's also ride-sharing services. These are people who are regular drivers who are going into a destination and they want someone to ride with them. And again, these have popped up in every country in the world. And there are also car-sharing services. You're starting to see these in more and more cities where there's a set of cars parked on the street, and if you join the program, you can borrow the car for the day to just make a trip from one point to another. So we're seeing a radical reinvention of the auto business right now, the transportation business. This idea that you used to have to own a car, that's a thing of the past now. There are many other ways to get transportation on demand. And of course, the taxi drivers have had to respond, and so they've created their own version of an Uber app. And these are in every country in the world. Again, some of them are successful, some of them are not so successful, candidly. The cab drivers have been slow to respond and not very creative in their response. But the ripples extend further. The ripples have extended much further. General Motors has had to respond to Uber, and they responded by making a $500 million investment in rival Lyft. And Apple responded by making a $1 billion investment in Uber's Chinese rival, Didi. So you can start to see some of the giants of industry are responding to these changes. They're responding because this is a transformational idea. This idea of purchasing a car is being replaced by the idea that you can have access to transformation on demand just with the touch of a button. That's a radical notion, and it's going to radically change the economics of those old manufacturing businesses. That's not all. The ripple effect continues far beyond the automotive business. There are literally thousands of companies that we call Uber for X, whether it's Uber for trucks or bicycles or parking, Uber for errands, if you need someone to pick up your dry cleaning or clean your house. There's an Uber version, a service like that that's modeled on the Uber business. Even for alcohol delivery or in places where it's legal, California and all other places, marijuana delivery to the home. Literally, this idea of an Uber business model is being applied across every possible industry. And so you see tremendous creativity has been unlocked when we get the notion that we can turn products into services that are available on demand. The final idea I want to share with you is Uber as a disruptor. But again, this is an understatement. Uber's no mere disruptor. They're public enemy number one. Everybody hates Uber. Everywhere you go in the world, people hate Uber. There are protests against Uber in every single country. People say it's unfair competition that doesn't respect the rules. They say it's unsafe. They're not observing regulations. And so in every country in the world, there have been protests. Particularly in Europe, we've seen tremendous protests. In France, they set cars on fire. They turned Uber cars over and so on. Of course, in France, protests are a kind of national sport. So we all take this with a grain of salt. The reason people react so strongly to Uber is that they're taking rules from the internet and they're now imposing them on the real world. That's new. That's a radical change from the past. We're not used to that. That's a very strange place for us to go. I'll give you an example that doesn't involve taxi drivers protesting. How many people know about Uber's surge pricing? Okay, some people raise their hands. Do any of you like it? No, we hate it. So even if you love this service, you hate this. This is dynamic pricing. And the idea is if there's great demand for a car, the price goes up. Well, that's natural law. The law of supply and demand tells us that's going to happen. If there's great demand, the price has to go up. And the reason for that is simple. If all the cabs are booked and all the Uber cars are full, there's not enough cars to satisfy the demand. So Uber dynamically raises the price, and that attracts other drivers to come into that area, or sometimes they're drivers at home, and they'll actually get off of their couch and get in the car and start driving. So Uber creates more supply by increasing the price, but this is a very strange idea for people. Now what's interesting is that this is quite normal on the internet. If you ever shop on Amazon, you know that they use dynamic pricing every single day. So this is quite normal on the internet, but it's rare in the real world. We haven't had real-time marketplaces that can adjust prices in the real world before. But Uber is pioneering this, but for some people that's a very tough thing for them to understand. It's radical. Uber's also using software, particularly user reviews and ratings, to replace rules and regulation. Now, customers love this. People love using that 5-star button. It makes them feel empowered. It makes them feel like they're in control. We love to read about the reviews of products before we purchase them. But for governments, this creates a huge problem, particularly city governments, because for 80 so years, city governments have regulated the taxi business. That's their privilege to regulate the cab business. They don't really want Uber to come in and tell them how to do that differently. And so that's why Uber has had conflicts with all these places on the map that are colored in red. They've run into problems with local governments because they're challenging government regulation. Uber's saying, we have a better way to regulate. The customer is empowered to regulate. The customer rating is a kind of regulation. Uber's also replacing management with software. It's a crazy idea. The concept is called algorithmic management, where you manage employees based on their ratings and reviews and how they perform. Now, this is a fun experiment you can do. When you ride in an Uber, ask the driver who his boss is. You ask the driver, who's your boss? And the driver will always say this, oh, I don't have a boss. I'm an independent businessman. I work for myself. And they love Uber for that reason. They can start when they want to. They can stop when they want to. Nobody tells them what to do. And then I say, well, okay, but how do you find out where the passenger is that you have to pick up? And the driver says, oh, the app tells me that. I say, oh, I see, okay. And then when you're finished with the ride, who do you report to tell them that you finished the ride? And the driver says, no problem. The app knows. The app knows when I finished the ride, and the app gives me another assignment. And so I say, well, you work for an app. You're not an independent businessman. Newsflash for Uber drivers. If your boss is an app, you may be a biological robot. And that brings me to the notion of automation. Software, automation software, as a substitution for labor. This is a transformative trend. Now, we've seen great breakthroughs in the last few years in robotics. Robots are not new. Robots in manufacturing have been around for 30 years. But now the robots are operating in space, and they're showing up in hotels and restaurants, and this bartender in Berlin is a robot. We have robot surgeons that operate on us. We trust our lives to robots today. Robots are starting to appear in the aisles of grocery stores and shops. Next month in the United States, SoftBank is going to introduce their Pepper robot. And Pepper will be integrated with IBM Watson artificial intelligence to answer customer questions. And you'll start to see these robots appearing in stores. And of course, Japan has been a pioneer in humanoid robots for many, many years. So this is going to become something that's quite normal. Today, it's a novelty, but in a few years, this is going to become quite normal. And just 5 years ago, Google's robot vehicles were considered sort of new, and not just new, radical, maybe unconventional, maybe preposterous. But today, Google cars are being tested on the streets in California, Nevada, Florida, and many cities in the United States. And that's not all. We also have robot taxis deployed in Japan, and they're being tested right now here in Singapore, and also in the UK, in Greenwich. And so autonomous vehicles, robot vehicles, will become something quite normal in the next few years. The message here is simple. Whatever can be automated will be. That's a certainty. Every company is forced to confront this because their competitors are going to automate. Uber's not asleep here. They're well aware of this. They've made a massive investment in artificial intelligence and robotic vehicles with Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh in the United States. And they their latest car, their robot vehicle, was just revealed about a week ago. And so you can imagine that in the not too distant future, maybe in 2020, the Uber interface will offer you a choice of a human driver or an autonomous vehicle. And if you want something delivered, you'll have a choice of a drone delivery as well, if you wish. I know these ideas sound crazy today, but I think they'll be quite normal in just 5 years. The idea is that great customer experience can happen where the digital world, the virtual world, meets the real world. This is the area for great innovation today. And the example of Uber inspires us to rethink our own businesses and think about how can we use software to improve that experience, not just at the point of purchase, but even while people are consuming it. Mobile changes everything. It changes us. It changes our expectation. We expect to be able to order things on demand with a touch of one button and instantly be gratified. If we don't get that, we're disappointed, deeply disappointed. If we can't find someone's app on our phone, we don't keep looking for it, we find a replacement or a substitute. Customers expect to have that information at their fingertips, and if they can't find you, they stop looking for you. And that means that every company has to start to turn into a software company that operates a platform and an ecosystem of partners. This transformation will hit every business in this room. To think about it, remember these three questions. How might our products be turned into digital services? What is the proprietary asset at the core of my business? How do we collect data? How do we manage it? How do we use that data to improve our service and predict, anticipate what our customers might wish to do? How can I turn my business into an open platform for collaboration with partners and conversations with my customers? And remember, whatever can be vaporized will be. I'm Robert Tercek. It's been a pleasure chatting with you about this, and I'll be around later on today, too.